Last episode, I mentioned I would talk about an anime that was a byproduct of the success of Akira, something I called a tech demo anime. To which you may be wondering, what the fuck do I actually mean by that? Well, if you play a lot of video games, you may be aware of the term tech demo, which is usually in reference to game demos shown at places like E3 and other gaming events that are usually in reference to demos of AAA games, which is mainly used to show off not only what is capable of the games that are being shown off, but usually it is in service of wooing the crowd with flashy graphics, impressive set pieces, etc., and is mostly used as a way to convince people into pre-ordering their games. However, gamers use the term tech demos to normally reference games that were designed to look flashy and good looking, but ultimately lacking the substance that would make a great game fun in the first place, usually resulting in products that look great on the outside looking in, but ultimately resulting in an average to bad product. And like I mentioned in my last review, Akira, whether you like it or not, it basically sparked a renaissance within the anime industry, intentional or otherwise, spawning a wave of anime that tried desperately to one-up Akira and get a slice of the pie, anime that I like to call the tech demo anime. If you've seen anime on a long enough timeline, you've definitely seen these type of animes before. Venus Wars, Blood the Last Vampire, Escaflowne the Movie, etc., etc. A type of anime that does at least leave the impression that while it is well produced and animated, the rest of the pie not tasting as good as it could have. The metaphorical pie which should have been left in the oven for a few more minutes for that golden crust. When I reviewed Akira, I was towing the line of giving the anime its props, while also being critical of its shortcomings, and while I attribute Akira's success for inadvertently spawning a new wave of poor imitators, which probably didn't help that Akira had a good amount of the trappings of a tech demo anime, I ultimately give it a pass mainly for what Akira did for the anime landscape of its time, and how it shaped the future of anime for decades to come. And for those who want to know all about that, then please consider watching my Akira review first, before watching this one. That being said, I won't say that all anime that tried to ape from the success of Akira were all bad. In fact, most of the anime made post Akira that try to be a cinematic and high quality production, the ones that succeeded were animes that didn't try to be like Akira, or try to vapidly link themselves to Akira to market their anime to gullible anime fans who didn't know any better, such as Harmageddon, which Central Park Media had the gall to put statements like, "From the creators of Akira, a Metropolis" on the cover, which, while it is true, it's arguable that Harmageddon is far inferior to both of those films, misleading fans of either film to think it's on the level of Akira when it's not, all for the sake of a quick buck. And look, while I'm not saying Harmageddon is a trash fire, there's a reason that it ultimately isn't mentioned in current conversations of classic animes from the time period. And while I will give it its due eventually, it's a good example of how lesser animes with good production values are marketed in dishonest and misleading ways, meant as classless money grabs. Thus, we come to the subject for today's anime haul video. Spriggan. Spriggan is an animated film released in 1998, which was adapted from the original 1989 manga of the same name. The film having been produced by Studio 4 Degrees Celsius, a studio co-founded by Koji Morimoto, who worked on Akira, as well as other titles such as Robot Carnival, and even Fist of the North Star of all things. The studio got its start on the animated short compilation directed by both Katsuhiro Otomo and Satoshi Kon, an anime by the name of Memories. Studio 4 Degrees Celsius having worked on the shorts Magnetic Rose and Cannon Fodder. The same studio would also go on to work on the Berserk film trilogy, Berserk: The Golden Age arc. And despite what you may feel about it, especially in regards of its use of CG animation, it is well produced overall. Point is, Studio 4 Degrees Celsius is a studio with some actual chops behind it, and their filmography speaks for itself. So what about Spriggan? Well, before we continue on, I feel it is important to talk about its source material. So let's answer this simple question from the top. What the fuck is Spriggan? To be forward with you guys, one of the main reasons I picked Spriggan for this review was because of the fact that it was announced that a brand new anime adaptation of Spriggan would be coming to Netflix sometime in 2022. And despite the laughable claims of the manga being a quote-unquote global bestseller, which is just funny because its original print run in the US by Viz Media sold pretty poorly to the point it never completed its run. It did do relatively well enough in its native country of Japan, being able to hold its own with other classic mangas turned anime such as Shoro Masamune's Ghost in the Shell, and yes, even Katsuhiro Otomo's Akira. However, in terms of its legacy, it wasn't quite as lucky with the former. Even though it was popular enough to get adapted into the film I am reviewing as well as a video game developed by From Software. The fuck? Huh, who knew? The manga was written by Hiroshi Takashige and illustrated by Ryoji Minagawa. As far as Hiroshi Takashige is concerned, there's really not much on the guy. He worked on 3 mangas with Ryoji, achieving a modicum of success with Spriggan, before just fucking off and doing God knows what, before resurfacing to help with the writing of the Spriggan animated film, before going back into hibernation again, only to reawaken from his slumber to write the manga Until Death Do Us Part, which seemed to do okay, as it managed to go on from 2005 to 2015, only for Takashige to just disappear again. The dude truly is an enigma. His Wikipedia page has the density of a dying sun. As far as Ryoji Minagawa though, he actually seemed to do a lot more work on stuff I actually recognize. Not all of them, but he did do character design work for video games such as Tekken 5, 6, and Tag Tournament 2, as well as releasing a manga by the name of ARMS, or as you may know it, Project ARMS. While it may not mean much to the new guard of today, I probably made a few of you giddy just by me mentioning this. By the by, it's still in print by Discotek Media. And don't worry, I will get to this one of these days. Basically, the synopsis of the plot is that a young teenage high school kid, Yu Omine, equipped with the badass Omi Halcon muscle suit that gives him super strength and speed like he's from Crisis, while working with a top secret group called Arkham, who tries to stop bad adults from using spooky supernatural MacGuffins, preventing disaster and these bad guys from taking over the world. No, I'm not using that meme. To quote Fergie from the Black Eyed Peas, it's 2000 and late. From what I've read, it does seem overall pretty fun, if a bit vapid at times, and follows the way too young teenager who is somehow more qualified and better than the adults trope. But overall, from what is available for us Americans to consume, it is fun, and I would recommend you read it. But there's a problem. Normally, in order to get some context on the anime I'm reviewing, especially if it's adapted from another medium, in this case, manga, I try to do my diligence by consuming the original source material so I can have further context for what I'm reviewing. Except there's a problem. It's pretty much impossible to do so. Why, you ask? Well, for one, the original Viz print run of Striker, which for us dumb Americans, we didn't realize Spriggan was a Celtic word, which literally translated to striker, and it sold pretty poorly to the point that not only is the manga very hard to find in the US in English, but it's also incomplete as Viz never completed the full run due to its poor sales, and it never got reprinted. Now, here's hoping that Kodansha can maybe pick up the slack when the Netflix adaptation comes out. As for those wondering, why not just read it online? Well, sure, you can read the first 10 chapters from the first volume, but then that leaves the other 10 volumes unscanlated, which doesn't bode well when the movie's adaptation for your manga basically expected you to have read the manga in the first place, just to have context for its characters as well as what's going on overall. But I'm getting ahead of myself. The second reason I ultimately wanted to do this review was due to the fact that during the localization, it seems that ADV tried to mislead publications by giving press releases to online websites like Anime News Network to get them to hype Spriggan up as a Katsuhiro Otomo film by giving great significance to his role on the project. However, while he was involved as project supervisor, he didn't do much other than ensure the project got off the ground in the first place. He didn't direct the film in any way. It was Hiratsugu Kawasaki who played a major role, and while I don't fault ADV for using Katsuhiro Otomo's name for advertising, all it did when people heard the name Katsuhiro Otomo being associated with the project just gave false expectations to the audience of believing that the anime was just as good as Akira. ADV was so confident that the anime would sell gangbusters over here with this deceptive marketing that they not only premiered the film in the US in a limited theater run back in 2002, but they also produced a special edition copy of Spriggan on DVD that came with a soundtrack, and you wonder why they went bankrupt. Well, in any case, I think it's time that we talk about the film and answer the burning question on all your minds. Is it bad? Well, let's find out together. This is Spriggan. So I'm going to say what's on everyone's mind right now out of the gate. Just to get it out of the way, Spriggan as a film is well produced. Studio 4 Degrees Celsius really nailed down the look, fluid animation, cinematography, effects. As an animated film, it looks pretty stellar. In fact, my favorite parts of the film has to be the action set pieces, as this is definitely the part of the film it really excels at. From the city escape scene in Turkey to the fight with the Fat Man, the action sequences are really good and are the standout parts of the film. Another thing that this film really gets right, that some anime films don't really nail down at all, is the cinematography. When it comes to animated films or even animated shows, it can be a really tall order for a production house to simulate the look and feel of proper film cinematography and translate that into hundreds of cel-painted drawings. Studio 4 Degrees Celsius, though, nailed it. It seems very rare to have simulated real-world cinematography techniques applied to animation, but when done properly, it makes for an experience that looks stunning. Despite my misgivings with Spriggan as a film, this one thing is something I still get blown away by when watching it. Even when watching it again for this video, I found myself rather impressed with what they were capable of making. Hell, I'm also certain that at certain points of the film, they used CG at certain points. I'm not 100% on everything that I suspect to be CG, but like I said in my Patlabor 2 review, the best use of CG in an animated film is when it makes sense to do so, and the fact that I even doubt myself when, with specific scenes I suspect used CG, shows how effectively it is used, especially for the time. As expected of Studio 4 Degrees Celsius, they really nailed the animation, but not just that. They also nailed the art direction, and I'm not just speaking how they translated the manga to the big screen. That should be a given, but more so how it was translated. The art direction in this film, which is very similar to Magnetic Rose from Memories, has a very pseudo-realistic feel, and I don't necessarily mean how the characters move and such, but I mean the way they are dressed, the guns are modeled, backgrounds, hell, just the scene where Yu Omine is just trying to lose the goons in Turkey. I was actually surprised at how close they modeled the environment, background characters, props, etc. It's actually really impressive when you consider that this scene goes really fast, and yet, despite that, they didn't go out of their way to phone it in, and did their diligence to be as accurate as possible to the geography of the location it's set in, which is downright admirable. Also, I would be remiss to not mention how this movie gives the Metal Gear Solid vibes at times with its art direction and feel, at least in regards to the sequences in the Arkham base in Turkey. I mean, you have Omene Yu, a soldier trained from the ground up to be a complete badass, utilizing a special suit only to go on and fight wildly over-the-top enemies standing in his way from his goal. The only thing that's missing is a walking bipedal tank. So that's my thoughts on the visual side of the production. So how about the soundtrack? Well, yes, this is my jam. I first heard this in an Iranian porno I watched back in the 80s. It's fine. Yeah, I won't lie, while the symphonic suite utilized to score the film isn't bad by any means, it's by no means memorable either. It's a serviceable soundtrack. The soundtrack, by the by, was composed by Kuniaki Haishima, who actually composed soundtracks for some anime you may recognize. Blue Gender, Monster, Macross, Zero, even for video games like Siren. So I mean no disrespect to the man or his work, as he's not terrible. But I really do question ADV's decision to include the soundtrack with a special edition release of this film, because on its own terms, I just don't really enjoy it that much. C'est la vie, I guess. In short, in terms of its production, it is absolutely no slouch, and is well put together. But what about the film's plot? Well, it's not good. In regards to the plot of this film, it is by far the weakest link of the film, as not only does it do a pretty piss poor job at telling a proper story that's easy to follow along, it's a great example of how not to adapt a story's source material into an original work for a different medium, in this case film. The film starts off with an expedition team spelunking inside a mountain in Turkey, uncovering an ancient artifact that unfortunately dooms them all. Then we cut to our protagonist Yu Omine waking up from a nightmare.
Hey, are you trying to get left behind, you? First you miss weeks at school, and now you fall asleep in class. What's going on?
Hi, Brett Weaver. I bet you regret being super loyal to ADV like you were back in the day. Otherwise, most people would probably know who you are. In any case, Yu's classmates talk about this other gloomy-looking kid wondering what's wrong with him, only to transition to a scene of Yu meeting the kid on the roof of the school, only for him to reveal he has a bomb strapped to his chest with a message on his undershirt. Trying to resist the urge to press the button, Yu unfortunately not being able to do anything about it. Believe it or not, despite being at point blank range of that explosion, no, he's not dead. The next scene is pretty emblematic of my issues with this film. I'm going to play part of this scene and let you figure out what's going on.
You could have waited for me, you. Are you alright?
No, I'm not alright, damn it! What in the hell is Noah Yamamoto? And what does it have to do with me?
It's not generally known, but 6 months ago, an Arkham unit was wiped out at a research dig in Turkey.
Okay, and exactly how is that relevant?
Noah will be your grave. The research team found the Ark.
You mean the Old Testament, Noah?
That's right. The Lord saw that the wickedness of man was great, and his heart was filled with grief. And the Lord said, I will destroy man whom I have created from the face of the earth.
Do you see the problem here? What the fuck is actually going on? I want to apologize to Armitage III, because while I did have my issues with the pacing in that anime, at the very least it took some time to at least expand on who the characters are and what the plot is, as imperfect and uneven of a story it was. Spriggan, on the other hand, offers no such solace at all. The pace moving at the speed of fiberwire internet. Seriously, who the fuck is Uomine? Who the fuck is Yamamoto? What the fuck is Arkham? And what the fuck is going on in Turkey? The only thing we get out of this is that the heavy from Team Fortress bamps on in along with Gollum in order to take some golden plate from a dig site. One of the things I absolutely despise when it comes to original films based off of anime or manga series is when the films are written in such a way that it just assumes everyone watching it has already consumed the source material, which is just a terrible way to write any story, film, or otherwise. Films based off a show or book series shouldn't act as a barrier to entry, but rather as a way to introduce a series to an interested individual within an hour and a half to 2 hours. It also doesn't help when the original source material the movie is based off of isn't really available in the country it's being introduced to. It's really frustrating to watch a movie that just assumes you know what's going on before having watched it, just to be able to enjoy its plot. It reminds me of the crappy grimoire cards from the game Destiny. The game's plot was so thin that the writers thought it was a great idea to explain what's going on through pieces of lore you earn through playing its campaign, which you have to then read outside of the game on Bungie's website. Listen, if I have to read about the lore through a different medium instead of the original medium that the lore is intended for, just to understand it, your story is bad. However, in the case of Spriggan, it's worse, because not only was it written in a way that creates a barrier to entry to only allow fans of the manga to only understand who's who and to have proper context to enjoy it to some modicum of a degree, but considering the manga sold poorly in America, most watching the movie would have no way to read the manga anyway, especially with no modern print in circulation or available online, which doesn't help for the plot. So for everyone just using the refrain, just read the manga, to dissuade people from watching the inferior animated version of its original source material? Rotten hell. After that, Yu yells at Yamamoto like a millennial kid who didn't get his way from daddy, who takes a plane to Turkey to do God knows what, locked and fucking loaded, only to be detained and have all his weapons taken from him. And let's just marvel at the arsenal he took with him on a plane all the way into Turkey. Grenades, a K-bar, tools, binoculars, flares, an H&K G3 308 battle rifle, a Sig Sauer 9mm, assault vest with multiple loaded mags, and boxes upon boxes of ammo. Honestly, the best part of this is the response directly from the MP.
Did you come here to start a war?
Took the words right out of my mouth. Also, taking that arsenal on a plane internationally, can you tell that this film was made pre 9/11? After being let go from detainment, Yu and his handler take off for the city of Istanbul, but turns out that the handler wasn't as friendly as he seemed.
As for your real friends, they're all resting on the bottom of the straight and concrete jack.
Like I said earlier, this scene is pretty spectacular and has to be one of my favorite scenes. And holy shit, not only is Yu superhumanly fast, but so strong for a teenage boy in high school and his physical stature. Dude literally bats a guy clear across the bazaar like he's Babe Ruth hitting a home run. And then, wait, hold up, where the fuck did this guy come from? Does everyone in Turkey secretly have a scimitar on them at all times like they're an Agrabah from Aladdin? Well, like I was saying, Yu, as small of a guy as he is so fast and strong that he catches the scimitar in his hands, snaps it in half, and then roundhouse kicks the dude through a wall.
who sent you, but you idiots sure as hell aren't ready to take on a Spriggan.
Ignoring the physics-defying throw of that piece of a scimitar, what did he hit with it? A spy camera? Or did the studio think they were making a 3D film? What makes this physics-defying strength of Yu even more amazing is when you read his bio that the mercs that Yu is after prepped to be informed of who's involved in counter operations to stop them. I mean, read this shit. Yu is noted to be 5 foot tall and weighing in at 143 pounds. Yet this motherfucker not only moves like he's Usain Bolt, but also can hit harder than Butterbean. What the fuck does... Whoa, wait, hold the phone! Eye shape? Slant? Okay. I'm not sure how these background check things are usually done, but seriously? Eye shape? Slant? I understand that this was entirely put in by the actual production studio over at 4 Degrees Celsius, but if one didn't know any better, you would probably think this was just casual racism. Like, did we really need that descriptor to point out that Yu is clearly Asian? Oh, and by the by, we still have no real clue what the mercs are really after or what their goal is. The scene ending with the Heavy mentioning a mystery man by the name of Colonel McDougal. We cut to Yu traveling through the Middle Eastern countryside in a lengthy scene clearly meant to build mood. But all I'm building up to this is annoyance. Look, shots meant to establish atmosphere, tension, or mood is fine when we have an idea of what's actually going on. But we don't. Yu finally arrives at a base in the mountains who is trying to do his best solid Snake impression and, well, he fails miserably, only to be detained by the base's guards. But while being escorted to a cell, Yu sees a familiar face.
Doctor! Dr. Maisel! Wow, you have no idea how glad I am to see you and Margaret.
What are you doing? Come here!
Hey! Get up! Let me
We're
go!
sorry, sir.
You're sorry? Jeez!
Now hold on. Exactly what is going on here?
Doc! It's me, remember?
Ah! You! What are you doing in Turkey, you?
It's a long story. Wait a sec.
You mean you know him, Doctor?
He's Omanai Yu. He's Japan's #1 Spriggan.
Hold on. Why did Dr. Maisel's female assistant just now jump in to inform the guards of who Yu is? It's clear she knew who he was from the word go. But no, let old man Jenkins rack his head filled with frosted flakes around for a bit like a caveman, and hope his dementia doesn't prevent him from recognizing him, causing him to be put in prison. After being let go from detainment, the two give him a nice hot piping cup of cocoa and give him his new and improved Omihalcon muscle suit. And a good thing too, as the Heavy and Golem, along with a bunch of mercs, invade the base, allowing Yu to show off what his suit can do. While battling the Heavy, Golem tries sneaking into the base, only to run into the French Spriggan, Jean-Jacques Monde. Who's Jean, you may ask? Well, you wouldn't know, because the anime doesn't explain who he is unless you read the manga. You see a running theme here? Speaking of not explaining things, you know what's entirely absent about his character in this film? The fact that he's a fucking werewolf! Yeah, in the manga, he has lycanthropy, which usually manifests in a moment of crisis, yet in this film, after getting hurt, he just stays the same. That's it. Why Studio 4 Degrees Celsius thought it was a good idea to completely leave that out just completely bogs the mind. Meanwhile, the Heavy is taunting him about his friend, which makes Yu go complete rage mode. And it is glorious. Oh, come on, John. What the hell, man? You interrupted one of the most badass villain deaths in an anime ever. Blue balls. You having calmed down, we cut to some science lab or something, and it's here we finally get to see the villain proper.
When our spy satellite was destroyed, we conducted a thorough analysis of the electromagnetic pulse that emanated from Noah. The results have confirmed that the deductions we've made based on the plates from the other ruins are correct. All of the evidence points to a single answer, and we are the only ones with the key to unlocking Noah.
Oh, no. ADV actually did what you think they did. They used an actual child voice actor. This is Colonel McDougal, a freak child who's the head of the Mercs trying to get a hold of Noah's Ark. And I got a beef to pick with ADV on this one. One, why in the world did ADV think it was a good idea to cast an actual child to voice the character? I'm not saying child actors are completely terrible, but there's generally a reason why females are tasked with playing the roles of children in voice acting. It's because adult female actresses are more than capable at delivering believable performances while playing the role of a child. Whereas actual children actors are generally very inexperienced with acting to begin with. But this is worse, as not only do we have an inexperienced child voicing the role of a child, but voicing the role of an adult trapped in a kid's body, as McDougal clearly is. Look, I get it was for the sake of authenticity, but when you get line deliveries like this...
You! Get him!
I wouldn't advise it, gentlemen. Not unless you want to end up like your friend, that is. Squashed like an insect.
It's just hard to ignore. It boggles my mind that despite the amount of recognizable talent, well, within the anime voice acting circle at least, employed by ADV at that point, they chose to not use VAs like Tiffany Grant, Amanda Wen Lee, Hilary Haig, or heavens forbid, Monica Rial. Point is, they had a good amount of talent they could choose from to play the role of a child pretty convincingly. But no, let's hire, hold on, Kevin Korn. If only I could consider him the golden kernel of corn in a pile of shit. Back to the story, you alongside some Arkham soldiers interrogate Gollum. However, it seems it's for naught, as it seems the Heavy and Gollum were to act as more of a distraction, allowing Colonel McDougal to take them all by surprise alongside his genome army. And it's here we get some idea for why the Mercs are interested in Noah's Ark.
To begin with, the blessings of heaven are obviously the sun's ultraviolet rays. By adjusting the levels of ozone and carbon dioxide in the upper atmosphere, the amount of ultraviolet radiation reaching the Earth can be manipulated. Which means Noah's Ark is actually a system for controlling the Earth's weather.
Yes, I shit you not. Noah's Ark is a global warming machine. I would complain about this being a forced attempt at a message about the dangers of global warming and emissions, as this was the era of Al Gore and An Inconvenient Truth. But the hell of it is, there's not really a message behind it. And granted, I think it is a neat spin on the Noah's Ark tales from the Old Testament. Heck, even when Yu goes into the Ark to save Dr. Maisel and his assistant from McDougal, he runs into holograms, I guess, of dinosaurs, to which McDougal speculates the Ark not only was the same biblical artifact responsible for the ancient floods, but the whole story of Noah bringing two of each animal on board the Ark was actually the Ark creating and making new life for when the Earth was to start anew due to the floods. It's one of those moments that made me think, wow, this is actually pretty cool. Only to remember what movie I was actually watching, and remember how piss poor the story was up to this point. Alright, I'm just gonna wrap up this film because honestly, a lot of the Details aren't that important, as this movie isn't that smart of a film anyway. Basically, Colonel McDougal reveals to Dr. Maisel and his assistant that the reason he was interested in the Ark was to activate it and eradicate humanity. Why? Well, McDougal wants to use the Ark to destroy humanity because he views humanity as a mistake, so he wants to play God, wipe humanity off the face of the earth, and create new life. But why? I seriously will never understand why writers think that villains that view humanity as a mistake, so their whole goal is to kill off humanity, is even a good trope, especially when there is zero reason given for why the villain thinks that way. I mean, sure, if you want to be a complete total cynic, you could probably agree with him to some degree, but again, why does he want to kill humanity? It only serves to make McDougal a complete and total psycho, which is just shallow. No wonder Maisel refuses to help. Sure enough, McDougal activates the Ark, Yu breaks into the Ark to stop him, allowing Maisel and assistant to escape, and the two battle it out. But of course, psychic! And boy does McDougal fuck Yu up. But of course Yu isn't dead, and this is where we get another piece of interesting plot in regards to Yu. Oh, and by the way, spoilers if you even care. Yu was a part of a Black Ops program called Project Cosmos, which honestly kind of reminds me of the Spartan Project from Halo, as it was responsible for training kidnapped children to be turned into mindless super soldiers capable of handling difficult missions effectively. One mission having Yu murder a couple, revealing that his parents were killed off in the same way, causing Yu to go apeshit and kill the shit out of his commanding officers, one of which being the Heavy. And I do think it adds to Yu's character, but it comes way too late in the film for myself, let alone people who haven't read any of the manga, to properly care, where this is just where the shoddy writing in the script did not do any favors to the more dramatic and well thought out moments of the anime, and it's a complete and total bummer. Blah blah blah, Yu kills McDougal, the Ark blows up, Yu and John manages to get out of the Ark at the last minute, only to be rescued by some choppers, and the day is saved. The end. And that was Spriggan. You know, this anime could have been great, and yet it ended up a frustrating sit, not because I hate the anime's guts, oh no, but rather I saw the potential in it, only to end up like a wet fart out of a crusty asshole. The thing that bothers me the most about Spriggan the Movie is that it could have not only ended up as a classic, but it could have also made Spriggan more popular of an IP outside of Japan, not just Japan. Instead, despite its great production value, it ended up as an anime with great potential, only to waste all of it. Fact of the matter is, I don't hate this movie. Having watched it again for this review, there was a good amount of things I actually did like. The fight scenes are excellent, the use of CG is well done, and overall Spriggan the film as a concept is good and leaves room for improvement. But at the end of the day, despite Katsuhiro Otomo's involvement and name being used to intrigue potential viewers to buy DVDs of this anime, and despite the quality of its production, it wasn't the style that mattered. The substance is what mattered, and its substance is dog shit. Overall, if I had to lean towards one direction or another, I don't think it's god awful, just disappointing. If anyone was to ask me what I felt of the anime, whether it was worth watching at all, well, I would probably recommend it to potential would-be animators to study from, or if all you care about is some cool action scenes regardless of context, or good storytelling, then sure, I recommend it. But for any other reason, don't bother. For those who are curious, The anime is easy to find on eBay, so if you want to get a physical copy, it's not too expensive, but skip the special edition. The soundtrack is just not really worth it. But in any case, here's hoping that the Netflix anime adaptation of Spriggan is a way better adaptation than this. And Spriggan properly gets its time in the limelight. Well, that's it for this review. Now, I have no idea when this video will be out by, and most likely by the time this video releases, I will be missing the Halloween special in October. So to make up for that, I got an anime just for the occasion. An anime that, despite its quality, age, and overall obscurity, ended up a pretty thoughtful and provoking commentary on the nature of space travel. And to quote a famous blurb from a particular horror film, in space, no one can hear you scream. Till next time.